I don't know if you guys heard that congressmen and women have proposed that they get almost a $10,000 a year salary increase. It's your taxes and it's my taxes. So that's usually the common way that Confucianism is usually talked about. But I think it's no good, in as much as it has a lot of value. Let me, before moving into the more esoteric perspective, kind of throw this out there. For those of you in this class who have a checkered relationship with your parents, it's too bad for you because you have to carry two crosses. One cross has to do with the fact that your both parents or one parent has been profoundly nasty, and their nastiness has impacted you in a negative way. That's one cross you have to carry. The other cross is you're fully aware of the toxins that live inside you, but you also understand the difficulty of being a parent. And you also understand perhaps the regrets that live inside your parents, that maybe they want to make changes, maybe they wanted to make some changes, but they didn't have the resources. And the sooner you deal with the stuff, the sooner the many cracks in your psyche, i.e. house, will be mended, fixed. And then once you get into a relationship with anything, you can build a house on a solid foundation. Choose your friends carefully. If you're in the business of voting for council members, city members, various forms of political branches, examine who these people are whom you're voting for. If you are under the age of 25, 26, 30, do not date. Focus on school and school alone. Once you have your degree, i.e. power, then go out there. Okay. So we're going to do this the reversed way. Any questions or comments? We are first going to begin with the emperor, and I'm going to change the function of the emperor to a teacher. It's something we've talked about in this class for the past 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to just follow the course. What makes a teacher? Any good teacher. Yeah. I'm sorry? Sure, yes. I'll give you a couple of examples. For those of you who go to Costco once in a while and you buy rice, preferably basmati rice. It comes in like an orangish, pinkish bag, 25 pounds for about $25. If you run into Norma, she'll give you a discount. Just kidding. Now, let me tell you how you should make rice. That's really, really, really good. You can take notes if you want to. Just in case you have a date coming up and you want to impress your companion. If you're dating a man, it's always through his belly. And one of the ways you can deceive him is by feeding him good rice. 3-4 cups of water, in a relatively good-sized pot. Bring the water to a boil. Put some salt in it so that the water can become salty. About 2 cups of rice. Wash the rice first. Let the rice soak in the water for about 10-15 minutes. If you want your rice to fluff up like popcorn, leave it in water for about maybe 5-6 hours. Add some salt to it. And make sure that when the water and the salt are boiling, add some oil to it. When it has come to a boil, pour the rice in there for about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Make sure it's not fully cooked. And the way you test that is you take a single grain of rice, you put it in your mouth, you bite it. If there's a crunch, you go through the soft and then you hit the hard part. It's a crunch, it's ready. Strain it. Wash the pot. Put some oil. Cut some potatoes. Slice them. About maybe, I don't know, 1/4 inch. When the oil has come to a sizzle, add some salt, a little bit. Put the potatoes. Then add the rice. And make it like a hill. Shape it like a mountain. Put a couple of, 1/4 inch butter sticks on them. Some water. A towel. And put the cover on. Low, medium temperature. For about an hour. The potatoes will turn out like French fries, Persian style. The rice, oh man, it's delicious, it's beautiful. You know why I can tell it to you like this? Because I have been making rice since I was 11, when we were shipped to India. Experience. For those of you who have experience in anything and you're proficient, you are a teacher of that branch. If you make good coffee, you are a good barista. You can teach other people. You don't just make up stories. You know exactly what steps people have to take. There are good teachers in the iron stage, good teachers in the bronze stage, good teachers in the silver stage, and good teachers in the gold stage. Now, since we have been talking about teachers and gurus both in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Taoism, we're going to continue that narrative. The emperor, in this case, is going to be a teacher in the gold stage. Emperor. He runs and governs the country. And the country is the student. And in the student lives the iron, the bronze, the silver, and the desire for the gold. You need pleasure, physical pleasure. But it is the emperor, the teacher, who will tell you what sort of physical pleasures you should have. Okay? Now, how teachers are made, I don't know. But there was a guy about 2,000 years ago. His name was Plato, the Greek philosopher. He has this story called the allegory of the cave. Many of you know the story. If you don't know the story, read the story. If you don't like to read the story, listen to some audio out there told by someone. The story is very simple and yet very complicated. You have a kid, like all the other kids, who's born in a cave. All caves have certain images on the wall. Go to school, buy a bike, have a boyfriend, do this, do that. All the images you see on the cave walls are advertisements, create desires, create hopes, ambitions, dreams. They govern us. But never once do we see that they are simply images. They're not rooted in reality. And we never turn around to see what is the reason as to why there are these shadows on the walls. That there are people behind closed doors producing these images for you and I. Everybody is trying to get you interested in their cause. One kid, I don't know how, but all of a sudden hears this call. Is this really all that life is about? Could there be more? Could it be possible that everybody has lied to me? Is it true that my own emotions could have deceived me, like my son, who assumed that he was in love with this girl? And what happens when you're in pain, especially psychological, intellectual, reflective pain, is that you want to express what lives inside you with other people. You want them to understand you, to hear you. You want yourself to become visible. In pain, you want companion as you do so when you enjoy. But you realize people kind of shun you. They push you away. They say you're going crazy. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do that? And then you begin to doubt yourself. But if your pain is intense enough, if your curiosity is intense enough, you say, you know what? I thought these were my parents. They would enjoy me being curious, asking big questions. I thought these were my friends. But I've come to realize I have no friends. In pain, none of us have any friends. They make you soup, they give you a few bucks, but you will have to walk home alone, or you will have to lay in bed all by yourself. And so for the first time, something happens. He begins to examine. He looks behind him. And he sees that there is this fire. But it's not just the fire that has given birth to all these images on the wall, you see. There are these people walking back and forth. Everybody wants to be the next Beyonce or Eminem or Snoop Dogg. Everybody wants to be like Tom Cruise. These are all the images on the walls that all of us desire to possess, to become. And it comes to you as they're all illusions. They're all there to take your time, to take your life. That your life and your desires and your emotions really do not belong to you. And this is what this kid realizes. That he thought he was creative, he thought he was free, he thought he was autonomous, but none of them are true. Like a puppet has been governed his entire life. You need to understand how devastating this is. You know, I don't know much about any of you really. I just know that, forgive me, I have a friend here who has some age on him, 50. You know, and like this kid in the cave, one morning he looked in front of him and realized things don't make sense. He doesn't like what he sees within him or without him. He begins to ask questions. Comes to realize nobody really knows how to respond to his questions. You must ask yourself, is this man lonely on the inside? When you ask difficult questions and there are no answers to your questions, especially if your questions have intense emotions behind them. And so he decides that since no one is able to respond, understand, hear him, see him, he says, you know what? The hell with the whole thing. Just going to walk away from everything. And he goes upwards, he climbs up. You need to understand how difficult it is to realize your senses will no longer create beauty or give you a sense of pleasure or joy. That's what an emperor is. There is a reason why teachers can govern us. There's a reason why Plato argues that ultimately it is the philosopher king who must be the politician, who must be the president, who must be the emperor. Why? Because the philosopher king, like the Chinese emperors, they were born in the cave. They desired the shadows imposed upon the walls. But unlike all of us who pursue them, who allow these images to create emotions, ambition, desire inside us, this lone kid said no. He knew how to ask difficult questions. He knew how it felt to be orphaned, to realize, yes, these are my physical parents, but I no longer have any emotional connection with them. These are my friends. I've had a history with them, but they're completely useless and incompetent. This is my body. These are my history. I have these psychological narratives. It's kind of like Thomas Anderson, the movie The Matrix, who says, I have all these memories from my past, but none of them mean anything anymore. For those of you in this class who've had like a long-term relationship and it just fizzled out, and you hadn't seen this person for like years, and by chance you run into him or her, and you look at him or her and you realize you have zero feelings for him or her. And then you have to sit back and ask, how is that possible? You made so many sacrifices for this person. You wanted to marry him or her. You wanted to have children with this person. And now you run into him or her and you feel zero. You know how devastating it is to realize how much time and energy and youth you wasted? Now, there comes a point where the cave is no longer lit by anything. It's completely dark. No one asks questions the way you do. No one feels the way you do. You're all alone. You don't have a companion on your journey. And what are you looking for? You're looking for answers. How do you get answers? If there is a light coming from somewhere, but in the absence of light, all you have is darkness, despair, anger. But you know what happens to this kid and Plato's allegory of the cave? He's just very, very, very lucky. He's not absolutely consumed by despair and by depression. He sees something coming in from the mouth of the cave, and it is light. He begins to see something. He doesn't know what it is yet. It's the breakthrough we talked about some time ago. Like you have this glimpse that there is something wrong with your relationship, that there is something wrong with your job, that there is something wrong with this class. You don't know what it is, but you intuit it. And for the first time, you feel inspired. You feel something. You sense something. And so you move upwards even more. And then you see this opening. And then you get out. And for the first time, you see what life is all about. But here's the thing you need to understand. Once this kid is completely out of this cave, he stands before the sun. But he stands before the sun all alone. Whether it's joy or whether it's pain, you want to share that with some goddamn person out there. Anyone. You want to tell them how happy you are and why you're happy. You want to tell them you're sad and why you're sad. But like the emperor in Confucianism, our young good friend says, I have come to understand what lives in the cave, what the wall is all about, what the shadow is all about, what the fire does, what the people do, how the shadows are created. I know what darkness is. I know what it means to go through life solitary, to be depressed, to be angry, to be lied to, deceived by others as well as myself. I know the powers and the deceptions of imagination. And I know what it means to be inspired by light. And I know how it is to be out of the cave completely. And I know what the sun is. And I know how much looking at the sun hurts. And how long it takes for someone to get used to the sunlight. It takes days, if not years. And our young kid says, I am not going to keep this to myself. Like Gilgamesh, like the Buddha, like Lao Tzu, I'm going to go back into the cave and tell my father, tell my mother, tell my siblings, tell my friends that the cave creates nothing but illusions. And illusions create nothing but samsara, suffering, pain. He goes back in only to realize no one really likes to hear it. People enjoy the comforts of their life. As my son wanted to stay in the illusion that he actually is in love with this young woman who doesn't know much about the culture, who doesn't know the culture of her own. Only to realize that no one likes to hear his experiences. But one of the things you need to understand about the kid that gets out of the cave is that he knows, remembers well, and expresses well what it means to be born inside the cave. You need to understand how important that is. You see, your definition of education and my definition are very, very different. I don't take education seriously. And I know some of you in this class don't take education seriously. You don't take it seriously because you're lazy, because you're privileged, because you think it doesn't have any value or worth. I don't see it valuable because it doesn't nourish the human psyche. But I do see value in education because it will get you a degree. It will get you a job. It will get you money. That money will let you buy a house, put groceries on the table, get married, have children. So when we talk about emperors or teachers, you need to understand they have been through what you and I go through on a daily basis. They're like Magnus Carlsen. They just see 40, 50 steps ahead of us. We are in the immediate. They see the immediate, they see the past, and they see the future. Okay? Now, what is it that teachers, what is it that teachers want? Well, teachers want friendship. What kind of friendship? Certainly not friendship of the iron, the physical pleasures. Certainly, they're not there for your money. They're not there because they want to romanticize your physical and emotional bodies. Teachers want, as Aristotle would say, friendships of nobility. They are philosophers in the truest sense. They have fallen in love with the quest. And the quest ultimately has given them this fruit called wisdom. They want to share with us their wisdom body. That's what they want to share. Now, the only way that this sharing can be accomplished is what we call marriage. In Hinduism, it's called yoga. You must become intimate with the teacher. Intimate with his space, intimate with the emotions, intimate with the ideas, and ultimately intimate with their souls. And like all marriages, it is a monogamous relationship. And because it's a very traditional relationship, you cannot flirt with other things. Now, remember what I said about elders and youngers. That if you're young, you will never cross any certain lines that are there to protect the relationship. Your teacher is never your friend. Just because he or she shares the same space with you, it doesn't mean he or she considers you a friend. Like our friend in the allegory of the cave, he or she is there only for one purpose, wisdom. To give you the wisdom of what lives inside the cave, how shadows are created, how desires are created, how ambitions are created, what depression is, what loneliness is, what the spiritual quest looks like. Now, because the journey is long, dark, difficult, the teacher creates a community, a country, a culture. Friends are there to support you in your quest towards the gold. If you are questing for the gold, your boyfriend who's there for money, for sex, that person is not compatible to your life. You can't bring trash into what your teacher has created for you. you have any questions or comments? No one? We have 15 minutes. Yeah.
I want to make the rice. Is it like crispy on the bottom?
If you put potatoes, it'll be crispy potatoes. If you don't put potatoes, you can just pour the rice in there. Leave it for an extra like 20, 30 minutes, and you'll have crispy rice.
You just said that to just like add the potatoes and the rice and make it dough and add butter on top
And some water.
and some water.
And a towel so it can absorb the moisture.
Okay, like
Yeah.
over the top.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Not over the pot. First, over the pot and then the lid. Yeah. You can YouTube tadik, Persian, how to make Persian rice. Yeah. Any other questions about rice or Confucianism? Yeah.
You think that it's better to suffer alone or love yourself for someone else's fun?
Is it better to suffer alone or to what?
To love yourself for someone else's fun?
Yes. Within the context of the ideas I've spoken tonight, the student has to live through the teacher for 10 years. And again, just to kind of reiterate, the culture that lives inside any good teacher, past, present, and the future, is at a certain point, they come to realize that they are in the cave, that they are a prisoner to their physical body, they're a prisoner to culture, they're a prisoner to society, they're a prisoner to the religion of that culture, they're a prisoner to the advertisements, whatever forms of advertisement of culture. That they were consumed by all of that. They lived through all of that. There comes a point they begin to ask questions. So the teacher understands what it means to live in society, to be under the hypnotic influences of all the forces of society. Right? So in many ways, when the teacher speaks, you can see your own self inside them. The words, the language. In addition to the presence, you feel something through, by sitting back and listening. Or let's say Jordan Peterson is talking about the nature of suffering, for example. And it makes sense to you. You feel yourself coming to life. There are parts of you that are depressed, but there are parts of you that are just rejoicing because you're beginning to see things, understand things. Now, it doesn't mean you can do things to change your life. All you have is you're seeing something. You don't have the will to change it. Nobody has the will to change anything. You may come to my office and I may inspire you to stay in school. And you may say, okay, but that support needs to be in your life constantly. And the only constancy that exists is you and the person who told you stay in school, don't drop. Because the reason you want to get out of school is because your mom doesn't say anything to you. Your dad doesn't say anything to you. And whatever they say, well, you don't really respect them like that. Your friends are losers. Your coworkers are losers. Every goddamn person in your life is a loser. So what you have in terms of support system is people telling you, leave school. It's no good. So you need this external force. That's why you need to keep in touch at all times for many, 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 many years. So yes, for the first few years, you have to live through the emperor, the guide, the guru, the teacher. And there comes a point where you have teeth. You can't chew what life gives you. Your digestive system is not mature. You can't process things. You know, and you're going to go away living your own life. Then there comes a point where, you know, it's like when you become a parent, you realize what your own parents went through. You know, you call your mom and say, really, was I like a scumbag for like the first 50 years of my life? And your mom says, yeah, you know, your father had 5 strokes because of you. Really, I'm so sorry, Mom. Says, yeah, well, you know, you suck. You know, I'm a widow because of you, jackass. Say, well, Mom, can I buy you like new sofas? You know. And she says, yeah, but I don't have a job. You're like a 6-year-old man, you don't have a job? What is wrong with you? So that's another heartache. Yeah, then there comes a point where you've kind of graduated. You have your own teeth, you can chew, you can swallow, you can kind of process, keep the things that are good for you, for your temperament, for your place in life, where you are, and then trash the rest. Then what will happen is, once in a while you go back and you say, you know, I have teeth, where'd they come from? I can process things really well, where'd they come from? Now you go back in time, and then you realize, oh my God, this is what my parents went through. This is what my emperor went through. This is what my teacher went through. So there are all these stages that you have to kind of go through. But yes, for the first many years, you have to live through the culture that lives inside your teacher. But one thing I can tell you is about 99.999999% of the students fail. Anyone else? Yeah.
When you say you're in a marriage, whether it's a teacher, a partner, or some sort of really intimate relationship, and you're not supposed to know too much about them, but at the same time you gotta ask questions, what is the line? Like, how do you maneuver that?
Well, I'm not really talking about like romantic relationships. Especially here in this culture, there are no lines, there are no veils, there are no protective mechanisms. People say and do all sorts of nasty things to one another. And I'm not saying it's just here, it's everywhere, really. But at least before, there was some thin line that people kind of were aware not to cross. There are a couple of things. If, for example, you're hanging out with someone like a Socrates, what happens is something just happens to you. You don't know what's happening, but something happens to you. You feel some things, and those feelings inspire certain reflections, but you don't have the teeth to understand, to break apart and see what's inside the emotions or the reflections. All you know is that you feel intensely, and then you go home and your mind is running really fast in a circle, like a dog chasing its own tail, to no avail. And so what happens is you begin to, as time goes on, you begin to see, well, Socrates begins to occupy more space inside you, which means that you enjoy that space that's solely made for Socrates. You get to see a more clear, or perhaps a more beautified image of yourself, okay? It's like you're married, yes. You're also hanging out with Socrates, yes. Your husband is a great guy. He pays for this, he pays for that. You guys sit back, cuddle, watch a great movie. These are all great. But Socrates, he just inspired this part of you that your husband can't even reach, doesn't even know. Okay? And as Socrates begins to take more and more space, you give more space to Socrates because you like what you see about yourself. It may be painful, but you like it. And your husband has less access to you. Now, if you can be patient with your husband, and especially if your husband can be patient with you, because what happens at this stage is your husband is going to grow jealous of your relationship with Socrates. Okay? Now, jealousy for men and women are very different. Women are jealous emotionally, men are jealous physically. Okay? Now, if your husband can tolerate that you're now belonging to Socrates for about, all this time, what will happen, there comes a point where you no longer have all these intense emotions about Socrates. Your life, for the most part, is settled. You know how to live with chaos. Even if you're able to distract yourself, go back to the stupid life that you used to have. Okay? You have moments where Socrates comes up and makes you feel bad. Okay? Now, after 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, you're able to go back to your companion. Now, if that's not the case, and let's just say you're single, what happens is you want to figure out, why is Socrates the way he is? What made him the way he is? And you find so much mystery in that particular quest alone, and all of a sudden your job is no longer asking about, so what is the truth? What is God? What is this? What is that? You say, so and so, did you have this or did you have that? Are you married? How many kids you got? Do you have money? Do you have a job? You know, what kind of underwear you wear? You ask all these silly things. And it's because Socrates is creating so much mystery within you. And mystery is like mythology, in the sense that it connects you to some mysterious environments, inwardly as well as outwardly. And it's one of the things that you need to understand, that the less you're able to touch the mystery, the more intoxicated you'll become, the more desperate you become. And these are necessary components for the intimacy to grow, to balloon. Because the more passionate, the more in love you become with Socrates, the more passive you become. And the more maps or GPS, points of entrance and departure, go inside you. And eventually you will know what to do. But the mystery is there and has to be there. Yeah.
Of your component is usually lost in this.
I'm not going to talk about parents or teachers. I'll tell you a story that took place on Friday. My family and I went out on Telegraph to have some pizza. I'm not quite sure Telegraph and what, but Walgreens is there, Pete's is there. And so it's about 5 in the afternoon. So the sun is out there, you know. It's fully light. There are securities, cameras. This car pulls in. No plate, back or front. Windows are all tinted. This guy comes out from the passenger, masked. He breaks through 5 or 6 windows, grabs what he sees, gets back in the car. Then he goes to the Main Street Telegraph, and the car stops. They go through 5 or 6 windows again. They take some of the stuff. Someone comes out and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" The driver comes out, shows him the pistol. The guy runs back in the restaurant, and the guys leave. On the way back home, 580 is closed for the next 3 hours. 2 cars shooting. A bypasser gets hit. The point I'm trying to make is, if you look at the demise of the Roman culture, the Greek culture, the Persian culture, all cultures that tasted privilege, power. With privilege and power, you lose shame, you lose guilt, you lose fear. And then you do things that people usually don't do in broad daylight. And the truth is, no one does anything. No one can do anything. And when you take a picture and you go to the security guards, they say, "Don't come near us. We don't want trouble." And they say, "Okay, to whom do I go?" And then you call Oakland police, and they say, "Oh, it's going to take us about 2 hours." And this is how culture slowly diminishes. You know, And if you look at even the mass shootings that's taking place in this country, we have had more numbers of mass shootings than the number of days in this year. And then you have to kind of ask yourself, well, how do you define compassion? Well, it is true, you can find these people, you can lock them up. Well, when you lock someone up, if you don't educate them, well, it's just tax dollars going to trash. You have decent people who want to go to school, they have no money. Why not give that money to these people? And then you realize something, maybe people who are difficult to educate, maybe you should just get rid of them. Maybe that's an act of compassion for the rest of the society. And those who are willing to go to school, those who are willing to, say, have a job like the rest of us, maybe the culture should come together and create an environment where those who really want to work, they can find a job, they can get married, they can give food to their kids. So things become very, very complicated. The definition of justice, the definition of compassion, forgiveness, everything changes. There was one woman on Friday sitting in the car with her family and two children who were asleep, where this guy just broke through the glass. So, it takes a long, long time for a culture to create proper narratives for its people. As it takes many, many, many years for you to remain with your companion, that just in case you want to walk out, the element of shame and guilt will suffocate you, and fear and responsibility. And you say, okay, maybe I'll just go back and take care of my kids. I'll be a better person. But once you lose that, and I don't think this is anything new. I think it's been going on for a long, long time. Not to this extent, I don't think. But I think there's a reason, if you were to kind of just bring the conversation back to some of the ideas we were talking about, there's a reason why I think teachers have always deemed most people not to be qualified for such ideas, and they select their students very carefully. Yeah. Anyone else before we go home? Well, it's good to see all of you. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow.